Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Tuesday, September 26th, 2023 City of Escondido Planning Commission to order. If you'd all please rise for the flag salute. Commissioner Barber will lead us this evening.
Okay, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the roll call?
Chair Paul.
Yes, present.
Vice Chair Barbe.
Present.
Commissioner Barber.
Here.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Present.
Commissioner Maccaro.
Present.
Commissioner Spear. And Commissioner Weiler.
Here.
Next item is the approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2023 meeting. Do I have any questions or motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Oh, we're voting with
Voting
electronically?
has now been open. That's catching up with everybody. So you should hit refresh on your screens and it should have the option for you.
You want to hold that for a second? Barry, we're voting on the minutes, if you want.
Mine's stuck again.
It should be refreshed now again, hopefully. All right.
There we go.
All right.
The voting is, does not show. There we go. 6-1 to approve with 1 abstain.
All right, thank you. Next, written communications or oral communications?
None at this time.
Thank you. Then we go to our public hearing, PL 23-0329, the 2023 Omnibus Zoning Code Update. And we have a staff report. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Veronica Moronis. I'm your city planner, and I'll be presenting this item for you this evening. So tonight, this is a request to adopt a resolution recommending approval of the 2023 Omnibus to City Council for final action. The 2023 Omnibus Update is a series of minor zoning code amendments to the city's zoning ordinance made annually for the purposes of cleaning up minor formatting, grammatical errors, clarifying and incorporating code interpretations, and updating any language as required by state law. This annual process began in 2017. And this omnibus consists of some minor formatting, grammatical cleanups, as well as clarifications to certain existing requirements, minor modifications to existing processes, as well as updates for consistency with state law. Historically, this omnibus has contained more robust amendments. This 2023 omnibus is slightly curtailed as a result of our staffing capacity. We wanted to ensure that the commission saw necessary changes for this year. We do anticipate that in 2024, a more robust omnibus will be before the commission in the latter half of the year. So this table outlines which articles of the zoning code, as well as one article of the subdivision ordinance, fall into what type of category for proposed modification. A majority of these proposed changes consist of cleanups and consistency changes. There's several for clarification, and then one that would be considered streamlining. For further details on these types of changes, attachment 1 of your staff report outlines them. So of the proposed changes, staff considers 4 to be more substantive in nature. The first is Article 6, which is our residential zoning code. So the proposed change would permit for community garden uses as a primary use on properties that are owned by the city and are zoned R2, R3, R4, or R5. The streamlining would allow for this as a primary use and as a by right use subject to a lease agreement through the Economic Development Department. So we wouldn't be requiring any type of conditional use permit. Community gardens on private property are not proposed as part of this amendment. That would come under a separate community garden ordinance that staff doesn't have an ETA on at this time. So the proposed changes to Article 61 incorporate languages for the purposes of compliance with Assembly Bill 1397, which is a state housing law that permits for housing development projects to be processed by right if they incorporate a 20% affordability component. And this allowance is only for select sites identified on the city's adopted sites inventory as part of the sixth cycle housing element. And this language also is instructed under Program 1.3 of the adopted housing element. So that's what the change is for Article 61. Article 70 modifications include elimination of a regulatory sentence that conflicts with state requirements and adds clarifying information regarding the allowed number of ADUs and JADUs on properties that have more than one detached single-family dwelling. And finally, the proposed changes to Article 79 are cleanup items for the purposes of alignment with the East Valley Specific Plan, which was adopted in July. So environmental review, all of the proposed modifications are exempt for the purposes of CEQA under various different statute and categorical exemptions. Those environmental determinations are clarified under pages 14 and 15 of the agenda packet. And so with that, staff recommends approval of the resolution, recommending approval of the 2023 omnibus to City Council. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for questions.
If you have any questions, let's start with Stan. We'll go this way this time.
Sure, thank you. No, I think everything that was brought forward was fine. I only have a curiosity question regarding the Article 6, and what prompted the reconsideration to have the community gardens as a permitted use? Are we expecting some changes to some of the city-owned property that would actually create these community gardens?
So the primary driver is that we do have a general plan policy and our resource conservation element that explicitly directs for community gardens on properties in multifamily residential zones. At this time, we're able to regulate community gardens through the lease agreement process on city-owned properties. If we were to permit for community gardens on private properties, we would need to draft a much more comprehensive ordinance for that private development, since we can't require any sort of lease agreement since it's not city-owned property. So this was a way to fulfill portions of that general plan directive in concurrence with the agricultural initiatives, ag tech initiatives under the Economic Development Department.
Okay, perfect. That was exactly what I was looking for, so thank you.
Carrie?
That was my question, Stan. Thank you. None other than that.
Good with the changes?
I have a question or two. In Article 36 for cargo container restrictions, we're seeking to add R5 as specifically exempted. Where is that coming from? What's the reasoning or rationale for that?
Just want to make sure I'm looking at the language that you're referencing, so 1 second.
I think it's page 22.
Yes, so the cargo container restrictions, specifically, this is a prohibition, so we do not permit 4 cargo containers in residential zones. I believe this was primarily a cleanup to be consistent. R5 is a relatively newer zoning designation. I believe it came about as a result of some of the upzoning from the fifth cycle housing element about a decade ago, and it was just never incorporated. And so this is just the addition of the R5 zone for consistency purposes with the R1, 2, 3, 4, and RT zones.
I understand. So we have it there listed for the 4. We've added 5, and we didn't have that language in here, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. For Article 61, the 1397 by right state law, pursuant to that in Section D, it says rezoning of sites for RENA past the April 15th statutory deadline is subject to to by right approval of housing projects that include 20% of lower income units. Help me understand this a little bit in terms of, this relates to properties that are included on past inventories, correct?
That is correct.
And how does it affect those past properties? What is changing about that? Other than, it sounds to me like if they apply, help me if I make sure I understand this correctly. If they were to apply for, let's say, 20% or more low-income units, they would shift to a non-discretionary, but a more of a ministerial approval process?
That is correct.
Okay. Is that the only effect of this, or is?
That is correct. So currently, we do permit by right for mixed-use and residential developments on all of the sites that are qualifying under the AB 1397 requirements, but we require a plot plan, so some sort of zoning tool to review the site, and then we would have the applicant submit, once that's approved, for their building permits. This would require just the building permit review.
So currently, the review that's done, let's say they were to be in that category of meeting the threshold for low-income units. This body still reviews that for consistency with safety issues, like the plot plan, for example. We would no longer do that, I assume.
So plot plans only rise to the level of planning commission review if they are being processed concurrent with another type of permit that requires planning commission review, or if they are recommended to planning commission by the director of development services. So currently, on the selected sites that qualify under AB 1397, if an applicant applied for a housing development or a mixed-use development, they would be typically staff level review.
So how would it change then?
It comes down to the definitions of what by right means, and that is ministerial versus discretion, and the discretion being staff's discretion.
Effectively, though, if they don't require a plot plan for review, it's already in that category, correct?
It's in the category of ministerial.
Right. So why the change then, if it's already there?
Because currently, someone would have to submit for a plot plan first, which is discretionary.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. See if I have any others. I have a question regarding a couple changes here, and this is in reference to Article 70, ADUs. And we have currently in number 5, we have a requirement here that says under the maximum unit size for the ADU, we have something in here that says, look, we want the ADU or the accessory building or dwelling unit to be no greater than 50% of the actual primary unit. That's being stricken from here. A table 33 is added that provides other criteria for maximum size of the ADU based on the lot size. Why? And for example, if we look at this, if it's less than a 20,000 square foot lot, they're limited to 850 square feet for the ADU. If the primary unit happens to be a small unit, it's possible in this case that the ADU could be bigger, I guess, or comparable to the original unit. Why strike that portion in 5 and not have it in addition to that table?
Sure. So to clarify, that table is not being added. That table exists already. So state law has clarified that the minimum allowance of an ADU for a property are those 850 and 1,000 based on the number of bedrooms proposed. So the 50% further restricts, which is in conflict with state law, because state law has established these are the floors of size you can have for an ADU. If the city were to establish more flexible or higher levels of square footage allowances than state law, then the 50% threshold could be used to restrict that from expanding further, as long as it doesn't conflict with these minimum floors.
So you're suggesting that the language says we can't be more stringent than. What is the verbiage that restricts us from being more stringent from what the city is, or what the state is prescribing?
So the sentence that's being removed essentially conflicts with the minimum thresholds the state has established clearly in statute. So we cannot say you can have a minimum of 850 square feet unless it's greater, that 850 is greater than 50% of the total floor area. We are not allowed to say that under state statute. We have to, no matter the size of the primary unit, permit for a minimum of 850 square feet if it's 1 bedroom or less, and a minimum of 1,000 square feet if it's 2 bedrooms or more.
I understand that. My question is, you don't have handy the actual line of code that says that limits us to not being able to be more restrictive, do you? Is that handy?
The strike through portion of the code?
No, not ours, but actually the state verbiage that says the city cannot impose further restrictions.
No, staff does not have that language available at this time. We're happy to find that language and send it to you for after this meeting.
She emailed it to me yesterday.
You looked at it yesterday?
There was a pointed question from Chair Paul. The other point of interest on this is that the city received inquiry from HCD regarding the specific regulatory sentence as a complaint that was filed against the city to HCD's enforcement arm. And so HCD contacted the city, met with the former city planner, as well as the planner of record for that project, and had a meeting with them regarding the conflict associated with this sentence.
Okay. If I could receive that later, I'd be grateful for that. Thank you. And I think that is the extent of my questions. Thank you.
Judy, you have anything?
No, I do not. Thank you.
And David?
Well, I want to get further clarification following Commissioner Spears' questions about the 50% versus the 850 square feet. So you're emphasizing that 850 square feet is the minimum? Because I'm just not seeing that language. I'm seeing on the chart maximum permitted 850 square feet. I'm not seeing minimum.
I guess it's the minimum that the city, so yes. What was that?
It's the most restrictive that can be imposed, is what you're saying.
Right. We cannot restrict 850 less than. We cannot go below the 850 floor.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Article 61, Section 33-1206, extending the approval period of a conditional use permit from 12 to 24 months. So the 12 months that we've always had in place wasn't arbitrary. So my questions are, why was it considered appropriate to have a length of time not to exceed 12 months, and what has changed that we now consider it more appropriate to have 24 months?
Yes, so I don't have context on the original adoption of a 12-month expiration timeframe for conditional use permits. However, the need to change that 12 months to 24 months has really come from the timeframe for implementation of the conditional use permit. Once a conditional use permit is approved, a lot of times applicants still have to go through the post-entitlement process, and as part of that, sometimes that involves them bringing on additional members of their team to draft construction drawings if they're improving that space, such as a school or a church that might be going into an existing space or being built from the ground up. The documents that we require during the entitlement phase they're not as detailed. We don't require structural drawings. And so sometimes that process, along with funding, can take a longer period of time to where 12 months is not long enough. And so staff has seen that repeatedly where extensions are needed, and in an effort to streamline The amount of work, we are proposing to extend that initial expiration from 12 months to 24 months.
Okay, thank you. Back to Article 70, Section 331474, B as in boy 9. Wait till you're with me on this. Okay. I mean, maybe I need training wheels, but that paragraph is not clear to me. And I'm hoping you could provide more clarification of what that is accomplishing.
What page are you on, Dave?
Page 30.
30.
And you're talking about, sorry, the paragraph B there?
B9, number of accessory dwelling units on properties with more than one detached single-family dwelling.
So if there are more than one detached single-family dwelling on a lot, so in some instances, you may see 2 bungalow-type units on a lot,
They're already in existence.
already in existence. We see this a lot in older areas of cities, old Escondido neighborhood, or possibly other portions of the city. This limits their ability to 2 ADUs on that property if there's more than one detached single-family unit. So it places a limit on the number of ADUs that they can have if there is more than one detached single-family.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right. Okay, so I just would like you to explain one thing, the suitable sites inventory, if you could explain that a little bit. Thanks.
Yes. So as part of the housing element law and the requirements of jurisdictions to update their housing elements, jurisdictions have to produce a detailed list, line itemed, of properties, parcels within their jurisdiction bounds that are suitable for housing development. They use a methodology. Our methodology is identified and described in our housing element to identify those sites. So it's not an arbitrary plucking of sites. It's sites based on criteria. And then those RHNA units, those regional housing need allocated units, get placed hypothetically on those sites. They get allocated. And that is what the suitable sites inventory is. In our housing element, Appendix B is a literal list, parcel by parcel, of every site that is on that list, and there are 888.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, motion?
Make a motion to approve Planning Commission Resolution Number 2023-18.
I'll second it.
Would I be able to just get clarification on one question that he did before I continue? So back to the number of accessory dwelling units on properties. So I understand with more than one detached single-family dwelling, and in the older communities, there seems to be, that's prevalent there. What if it is that strict to a certain area, or say I'm thinking of areas in Escondido where there are larger, people have a couple of acres and they have 2 dwellings. Does that apply to them too, or will that be something to be taken into consideration?
It would apply to any property that has 2 of these units, regardless, 2 detached single-family dwellings, regardless of the zoning or the size of the lot, I should say.
So it doesn't matter the acre size if it's, okay, thank you.
Okay, vote?
Voting has been open. Should be able to refresh now.
Is it stuck? Is it stuck?
There you go.
Voting is 7-0 to approve, or recommend approval to the City Council.
Great. Okay, next item is future agenda items. If any of the commissioners have anything they'd like to see on the agenda? All right. Oral communications, we still have none. Planning Commissioner reports? All right. City Planner report.
Yes. So the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting, which is October 10th, will be canceled. We have no items slotted for that meeting. A notice will go out for the cancellation of the meeting. And the next regularly held meeting will be the October 24th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay.
I was also going to interject. I would like to just pose a question to commissioners. There's no need to respond at this junction, but as the new city planner, who is the secretary of the Planning Commission, there sometimes are changes in procedures or dissemination of information. And so I would encourage you, if you have an interest in expressing how you would like information conveyed to you or an interest in learning more about certain topics, to please contact me with your expressed opinions or thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you as well. Tonight's omnibus was simple, as you stated. In the past, we've had some that was fairly lengthy and involved. You mentioned that the following year we would probably have one that's more substantial. My recommendation would be not to pack too much into one planning meeting. If we have if we're talking about an annual cleanup and it is substantial, maybe that can be spread out so that we're not trying to tackle too much at one shot. That's my recommendation.
Okay, meeting adjourned.